I am just hanging out at home, and we're going to talk about how our electronics can possibly mind control us.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing is that I think now people don't notice what technology is doing to you because we're just so accustomed to actually having it that we don't, you know, it's just a part of our life. So I like to use the analogy of like the real threat of nuclear warfare. How when it was first put on the table, people were freaking out. People are like, the Russians are gonna bomb and all kinds of stuff, and they're gonna. And those were the people that didn't have that threat. And then when you're born like into a society where Dan Carlin calls it, being born with a gun to your head. It says if you're standing there, and you're like in your 20s or in your 30s, and somebody comes and he just put like a gun to your head, you panic, you immediately start losing your shit. And he says, what happens if you get it put in your face early in life? He says after a while, you kind of forget about it,
Yeah,
But says, what
yeah.
happens if you're born with a gun put to your head? Do you even notice it? He says you don't. It's part of your.
You get used to it.
Yeah, well, it's also like always been there, so it's like a part of your existence. And it's the same thing with these technologies that like the cell phones, the computers, and all these programs. It's just that now kids have this as part of their life, so it's
Yep.
just always been, the propaganda. They don't notice it.
Yeah, my little niece she's a pandemic baby, so she grew up with an iPad. She's just barely now going to kindergarten and interacting with other kids. So during the pandemic, mom and dad were scared of, well, letting her run around and catch something that could potentially harm her. So they they kept her pretty much inside, especially dad, because dad's a little tiny little bit of a germaphobe.
Is it
So yeah, and she
like
she was raised on an iPad. She was raised on an iPad. So
Bubble Boy
going out and meeting other kids is kind of hard.
or Howie Mandel germaphobe?
Oh yeah, yeah, that's gotta suck, like
What?
bad.
Yeah, could you imagine if they have like in commercials when they do like the bounty commercials and they like wipe down the counter and then they like put the camera on there and then they like end up putting like these little animated bacteria. Could you imagine if they had like goggles that you could put on and you could actually see the bacteria? You know how much that would freak out somebody like Howie Mandel, you know?
You know what? It would freak anybody out. I mean, like even normal people, they'd be like, "Here, put on these glasses,
Oh,
or
not me, bro.
put on these goggles, and go walk into,
A
I don't
restroom.
know, a high school. Go cry. You will break down and cry on how much germs there are just floating around.
Just germs and DNA and everything.
Bacteria.
Oh,
You go into a locker room and you'll just crumple into a little heap of. You go into a fetal position and just cry yourself to sleep. That's how bad
uh,
it is.
unless you're like a hardcore warrior, then you go in there and you have these goggles and you're like, "There's too many of them. I don't know if I can hold them off. Pass
They're
me the
in the walls.
they're all over the walls." And you
They're
look at
in the
your,
walls.
it's all over me.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Save yourself.
yeah. As a custodian, I've seen some nasty, nasty stuff.
You know, I've heard some people are like, the women's bathrooms are much worse than the men's bathrooms. And I always had a theory of why that is. Um, my theory is because a guy will go into a restroom just because he feel like, oh, I think I got to go to the bathroom. Then he'll go into the restroom and he'll go and use it. For a woman to go into a restroom and do anything but urinate, it's got to be an emergency. I don't think a woman is like, oh, I think I gotta have, like, they gotta be running to the bathroom and like that's why they're really messy. It's because it's like these are like all um you know catastrophes happening in someone's lives, and it had to be
You,
done.
that's a pretty good theory. My theory is that
We're gonna
they
grow.
can't really. go home and blow up their bathroom, and if they're like have a boyfriend or they're married, because that probably gross the guy out. So they go to the public bathroom and blow it up.
I'm
And
gonna load up. I got 15 minutes. I think I could make it.
yeah, but for real, for real, women's bathrooms are the most destroyed out of everything. Because
Is
I've cleaned, let's see, I've cleaned high schools, I've cleaned public places, and girls' bathrooms are always destroyed. I
is
don't know why.
yeah, it's just that's I'm gonna stick to my theory, but your theory is also pretty good too. So I guess I never considered that. All right, let's get back on the topic. Oh, damn. So there's a conspiracy out there that the first cell phone was like patented because a lot of people like when do you think the cell phone like emerged? Was that like
In the
90?
eight, the real,
The brick, right? The brick was 80s.
yeah,
But you think,
even before that, they had one, they had a phone that was in a briefcase.
yeah.
Like you had a phone and you had a chunk of a battery and a pad or something like that, and it was in a briefcase. And you pull it and you open it up, you punch a button, dial somebody, then walk around with the briefcase and the phone attached to your head.
And the briefcase was the battery, wasn't it? It was like
Yeah,
a gigantic battery that lasted like 10 minutes.
yeah, pretty much half an hour tops. And it's immediate, it's like emitting tons of radiation or whatever it is.
Yeah, I think that it is radiation and electromagnetic, something that's interacting with your brain. Um,
Yeah,
they
low. I read somewhere it was a low electromagnetic frequency. It's really low, but it's there.
but then again, it's like even like imagine if I very slowly irradiated you. Just gonna put a little bit of radiation, and people justify it like that. I mean, geez, I use a cell phone, and we're on cell phones, right? At least I'm on a cell phone right
I'm
now.
on a laptop, but I got a cell phone, and even laptops put out a little bit of radiation.
Yeah, who there was a guy, I think he was a comedian, who got addicted to playing World of Warcraft, I think is the name of the game. And he would sit there and he'd put the laptop on his lap, and he'd play for hours. And he ended up getting testicular cancer. And then they're like,
Oh,
oh,
yeah, that rings a bell. Both things, World of Warcraft and a laptop on your lap, playing
World
for hours and hours and hours.
World of Warcraft is just like that gives you radiation. Just just the concept. Anyway, so yeah, it's so then when he went and he got testicular cancer, he survived. They just had to remove one of his testicles. Um, they asked him like what his habits were, and he was like, "Yeah, well, I play, this, and they're like, "Yeah, that's it. Your laptop emits radiation, and it's sitting on your lap, so it's irradiating your testicles." And they're saying that in the community of like the gaming community, like with those people that use laptops, that's actually not uncommon. A lot of them will actually go to the doctor when they begin to feel a little bit of pain, and they're like, "Yeah, you're having cells like begin to kind of swell up in you. So whatever you're doing, like, so
Yeah, that's the laptop. Well, the lap of part of the laptop. You sit in a chair and you got it like resting in your lap while you're playing. And it's probably you're reclined and doing this, and it's those things get, man. Back in the day, back when my brother and his family were playing hardcore WoW players, they'd have laptops, and those things would heat up pretty darn good, like a cup of coffee hot.
oh geez, yeah, no
No,
thanks.
yeah, and the little fans on there are blowing everywhere, so it's blowing hot air and radiation in your crotch.
Yeah, you can do when you go use the bathroom, like go take a piss, like it glows green. It looks like you know. it- Damn. But anyways, I kind of lost track. Okay, so the cell phone, you know, it's in our life. The Wi-Fi, it's in the life of everybody here, and that's giving you radiation. But what if I were to tell you that radiation is not the only thing that it does to you? Um, there was well, we were kind of discussing this on and off, but the Scientific America article, you guys can look it up. It's mind control via cell phone, and they started to, and this barely came out, but they've been doing it for years, where they said that they were sending out like signals from the cell towers, just in case of a disaster, and there was people panicking. They could kind of just like get you to calm down a little bit via signals that were being sent, through the radio towers. And it's like, well, this is going to be really good because this is going to control the mass so that they don't panic and cause more harm. And a lot of people, when they hear these excuses, they're like, that's what they're doing. They're just controlling people so that they don't panic and like start destroying the city or each other. It's a good thing. But then it's like, if they can make you do that, people don't think about what else are they doing to you.
Yeah. So what I was looking at is that our bodies have some kind of makeup that can be manipulated with small amounts of electromagnetic frequency. When they turn it on or off or whatever, what have you, you can get anxiety, you can get depression, you can get sick, you can just go nuts. And all it takes is just a little bit of manipulation, and then that's it. So, and they don't even have to do that if they want to ruin people's lives, really. I mean, remember that big, what was it? Emergency thing across the country that nobody signed up for? Yeah,
Yeah.
emergency broadcast. They're like, oh, we're going to pump this out on everybody's cell phone at 2 p.m. on a Friday or whatever. And
The
people were panicking. People were going, oh, that's how they're going to get us. They're going to send out this signal. It'll fry people's brains. They'll drop dead, or, they'll just curl up in a ball and cry because because they're scared or whatever. Nothing happened. A lot of people shut their cell phones off, but here's the kicker. A lot of Amish people got shunned because they sent that, because they don't watch the news. They didn't get the message that they're going to send out an emergency broadcast system, and all these Amish dudes are out out with their other Amish brothers, and all of a sudden their pocket starts going and they're like, Jebediah, what the hell is that?
What is that, Jedediah? What do you got over there? What are you hiding?
It's magic brick.
Yeah. It's a magic little portal to hell. You're communicating with them devils. Them devils over there sending you them text messages and sending you them giffies and them memes.
Giffies and memes.
Giffies and memes.
Watching that your tube.
You're watching a York tube that's gonna come on down, and demon's gonna reach out from that screen and strangle you while you're sleeping, yo. I'm telling you, Jedediah. And then some guy ran up from behind a building. He's like, "You fool! You'll kill us all. He will."
Shut up, Jebediah! You'll kill us all.
Be quiet over there, Leviticus.
Leviticus.
Leviticus Cornwall. Take it easy there. But
Shit.
But I mean, also the mind control type of stuff. It's not just like directly, like it's in your brain. It's also like pattern forming. There was this, that rapper Tom McDonald.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So his girlfriend Nova, she had this. She was talking about how she's from California, and I guess they have like your phone will vibrate and it'll go and whenever there's an earthquake, so whenever you hear that, like, you run underneath a table and you go and you do that, and then she was saying that she went somewhere else and they had an Amber Alert, and the Amber Alert started going because it goes the same way, it's the same sound, and in front of a crowd of people she like ran and dove underneath the table. And this was in a different state, and then people are like, "What are you doing?" People, it was weird.
Yeah,
and then
that's That's programming, yeah.
It's exactly what it is. It's programming, and she was
And
programmed.
yeah, a lot of people, myself included, we get hooked on a platform and we don't want to miss like one of our favorite creators being online, going live, so you can hang out with them and watch what they're doing and then interact with them. And then you get a little, when they like highlight your comment and they're like, oh, that's funny. Ha 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 ha. Like you get a little dopamine rush. It's just like with anything else.
You're
Um,
like, what? They
yeah,
like my stuff.
yeah, so like some famous person on Twitter makes a post and you comment on it and then they like it or they comment back, you get a little dopamine rush. And then when you don't get it, then you kind of get depressed.
Hmm. I guess that kind of makes sense because I think that your brain, like when you become associated with a creator, it's almost like, let's say that every Friday your buddy comes at 5 and he comes to visit you, and he comes and he hangs out and you guys have a great time because it's your friend and you guys have a blast. But your brain can't differentiate the difference between the chemicals in your brain. They can't tell, like, my friend's visiting me and somebody is posting something that I like, So
Yeah,
when when somebody posts something or they address you and then they're like, "Hey, Dirty Birdie, that was a good joke." Your brain chemical is probably like, "Oh, his friend must have said something really hilarious or might have liked this joke, or whatever it is," and it starts giving you that rush. And I think that through social media platforms, I think that's the whole point, is that it's trying to confuse your brain chemicals, so that even when you do try to establish like relationships, your brain's like, I think I have too many friends, so I'm gonna become like antisocial because you have all these people online, you know.
yeah, yeah. That's the other part too. Is that they do have a bad problem with parasocial relationships. Now, I have to admit it. In the wintertime here, it sucks. Okay, you don't want to go out and do anything, so you hop
Yeah.
online with your online friends and you talk with them, and then pretty much they have a schedule. So you're like, okay, at 5 o'clock, this person's going to be on YouTube Live. So that's where I'm going to be and talk with them and catch up or whatever. And then summertime comes around and you're like, I want to go outside and play, but my friend is supposed to be online. And if I miss it, I might get sad or whatever.
Yeah, dude, that's a true thing too, because you're like, I want to go, and either way, you're gonna be a little sad. Number one, you might be sad because you decide to stay outside, which is more healthy because you're absorbing the vitamin D through the sun, and that gives you the feel good chemicals.
But you
But
feel like you're missing out on something because you're missing their show.
so you don't fully like enjoy it because you're still like a little like, man, I'm missing the show, or it's like, oh, it's over and I missed it. And or if you do it the other way and you go and you watch the show and or whatever it is that you're doing inside, and you're in there and you're watching it and you're getting that little bit of dopamine, but at the end you feel either guilty because you didn't get done what you needed to get done, or you know you didn't get the sunlight, so you didn't get like those feel good chemicals, so you still, like, after it's over you feel like shit and you're like, man, I should.
Yeah, even worse is the fear of missing out. You're like, what if I miss something really important, really cool, like some kind of cliffhanger?
Yeah, and I mean, and that's all by design too, the way that this whole, that's why we have TikTok, um uh, shorts like on YouTube, that they're like, what's the, it's like 30 seconds. You have like 30 seconds to watch a video, and
You
and
know,
then
shorts on YouTube are 15 seconds, but you can make them 30, 60 seconds depending on what you're doing.
yeah, and that's on purpose. They're trying to give people like the short like attention span, so that
Oh
you
yeah,
know
the goldfish theory. Yeah, I remember seeing that a couple of years ago when TikTok was really getting big, and people were like, "These things are only 15 minutes long." But my son has been scrolling for hours, and now he can't focus on anything. And I'm like, "Oh look, it's it's technological ADD."
yeah, it's programming you because it produces like impatience too. So people that watch a lot of shorts or a lot of even, especially if they watch this terrible channel and then they
Yeah,
kind of
they're
like,
terrible.
yeah, horrible. Anyways, so you
Oh,
develop like intolerance or anything longer. Yeah, what is going on? Like an
well,
intolerance anything longer than a minute. It's almost like, oh man, this video is 45 seconds long. Why is it so long? And if you get programmed that way, you you won't be able to accomplish anything that takes more than, let's say, 3 minutes tops. Let's say you have to get your garden set up and you're out there for like only 5 minutes. And you're like, oh, this is taking forever. I'm gonna go do something else. And it's programming. Because the more impatient people are, or if they're programmed like the goldfish, like you said, all they have to do is just put a screen in front of you and you'll be happy. Everything else just seems like a waste of time because, like you said, you're missing out.
yeah. I remember when my nephew was asking me if I got TikTok, and I'm like, no. And he's like, well, why not? And I'm like, what do you mean, why not? One, it's spyware.
Yeah, it's China
Two,
propaganda spyware.
two, it's and you're programming yourself to have ADD. Like you can't focus on anything. What if you really needed to focus on something, but 5 minutes ago you're watching TikTok, and then you pick up a book and you got to read a book, and you're like, come on, nope, come on, start over.
Yeah.
All right, nope, come on, start over.
And all you're thinking about is going back to watching the screen.
Eventually, you're going to get frustrated and want to go back to the screen.
Yeah, and that's why when a television was first like invented, and what did they call it? It was television programming. You know,
Oh, the idiot box. They called it the idiot box way back when.
yeah, the idiot box because people were they stopped learning, they stopped wanting to read, they stopped wanting to do all these things. All they wanted to do was sit in front of his box, and it's like that now. You know, it,
Oh yeah, it's still like that now.
only now it's a lot worse because now they have this. Because back then, what did they have? The honeymooners. Hey,
You had way back when I was a kid, you had three channels, and that was it. And they all shut off at what was it, midnight?
at midnight. Yep, you had the last, and then what would they play? They would play the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge
You
of
know,
Allegiance. And as soon as that was done, they'd say something like, "Thanks for watching," ba 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 ba. And as soon as midnight hit, it was snow and just, and that
yep,
was it until I think 6 a.m.
yeah. And the first thing is they would play the Pledge of Allegiance, and then that's how they do. And then they would feed you the news. You
Oh
know,
yeah,
and
yeah,
that's
yeah.
what it
And
was.
then I remember when cable came around, and oh, CNN was a new thing. That was 24 hours a day, going all the time.
Yeah, people sat there and they watched CNN, for as long as they could because they were not used to something being that long. And that's crazy that we kind of started a certain way and then we went like completely the other direction because people sat there to watch some program that was super long and they just couldn't take their eyes off it. And then because there was only so much they could report on, it would repeat itself. You know,
Yep.
and people were so like in awe of what was going on that they sat there and watched the same stories over and over.
Over and over and over. And then MTV did the same thing.
Back when MTV was music, and then it
Yeah,
became
when MTV actually played music instead of garbage, but I digress. Um,
a bunch of girls crying.
I
There's
mean, I would when I was in at what was it, Upper Bound, which was a high school program for kids. We'd wake up 8 o'clock, go down to the what is it, the common area, flip on the TV, go to MTV, and every day at 9 o'clock was the same music video, and every day they would play the same thing unless something new showed up, and then that was it. But a lot of cable channels would do the same thing.
play the same stuff. Could you imagine if you have like some foreigner or somebody that's not familiar with the way that the TV works or the programming works, and then you're like, "Yeah, I have psychic powers. I'm gonna tell you at the next news report that's gonna come up, it's gonna talk about, and then you just turn it on the TV and you know exactly what they're gonna talk about."
Yeah, that would freak somebody out. You'd be like, wait, 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 wait. He's gonna mention Bush, and all of a sudden Bush just shows up and starts talking.
Yeah, he's like, hey, everybody, it's me, Mr. B. Um, anyways, but yeah, and it's crazy because people do think about like programming just like strictly like hypnotism, which that's what we're going to talk about next, is the subliminal messaging that's in television. So we just covered programming in a sense that it forms patterns that they don't need to put subliminal messaging because you'll do that to yourself, you know. But what about when they put subliminal messaging in on screens? You know, like
Mm.
like I think they first started doing it with backmasking, wasn't it? What came
What was it
first?
called?
Backmasking. You know what that is?
Backmasking.
Yeah, that's when they would take records and then they would put a message and it was backwards. And then when you played it forwards, you didn't notice anything. And then your brain would pick it up. Your brain would pick up the signal and it was in your subconscious. So they
Oh, okay.
they did an experiment at movie theaters where they were selling like these little commemorative pins, and they had all colors. They had blue, red, the typical stuff, and then they had like this weird like orange with brown polka dots, like the most horrendous, undesirable looking thing. And then they were trying to see if they can get people to kind of buy them. So they ended up putting like subliminal messaging on the screens with the pre-shows, and you know how they do like the commercials and in a movie theater, like before the actual movie begins, like you get there early.
Oh yeah, you get the little trailers that you can watch through.
Yeah, this summer, okay, Keanu Reeves, Morgan Freeman, one's a clown, one's a jet fighter. This summer, right? This film not yet. Just something ridiculous. Keanu Reeves, he knows too much. I know too much. Anyway, so they put like these messages in these prequels or pre whatever the hell you want to call them. And then after the movie was over, there was a line going into like this little concession stand where they had these little ribbons or whatever, and everybody bought the orange with the brown polka. It was either brown with orange polka dots or orange with brown. It was a horrible looking thing, and everybody bought these ribbons because that's what they were told to do. It was almost like an experiment. It's like if we can get them to buy this disgusting color, where would you put that? You're not gonna use that shit, you know?
Yeah, you just like, I felt compelled to buy this ugly ass pen that I'm never going to use.
Yeah. So if they do that, like imagine what else they can make you do. You know,
Oh well, yeah, that reminds me of the cigarette burn in
a
Fight
Fight Club.
Club.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just
Uh,
like quick, and it's like you may not have seen it, but somebody saw it, and now
yeah.
that's what they're going to think about the rest of the movie.
Yeah. And that was a thing too. They would put like in old movies, like the old John Wayne movies where, he was a sergeant, they would put for one brief second like a snippet of propaganda. So as people were watching these movies and the enemy was coming over the hill, like here comes the enemy, they're either communists or they're Nazis, which we should be angry with. I'm gonna say that. But the people would get like extremely like unhealthily angry at these characters. They'd be foaming at the mouth, like, here they are, and they cheered extra loud as they were dying. And what they were doing was they were just putting like snippets of propaganda, like, okay, you're gonna hate the communists because number one, they should be hated. I hate. Um, but it could have been the old movies. But that's what they were doing is they were like programming a culture to like severely hate a certain ideology to the point where people were literally foaming at them and they couldn't wait to get their hands. A lot of people were enlisting in the military just so they can
Oh yeah,
go
I heard about that. Yeah.
destroy the and and there was people that were 16 years old and they were enlisting and they're like you have to be 18 but no I'm 18 years old and they didn't care. They're like well welcome aboard,
Yep.
so that's how you got those stories of the kids out there fighting overseas. It's because they were just so compelled to fight for their country, and it was because of programming.
Yeah.
I imagine.
Well, you also got to remember that the actor has a lot of the actor,
Has a lot of gravitas.
if he's good at it, you can really side with him
Yeah,
or
he
not.
sucks.
Like I mean, like think of the poor guy that played Joffrey in Game of Thrones.
He's
People wanted to punch him in the face on the street when he was walking around. That's how much they hated the character.
Is that the little guy?
Yeah, that became king, and then it's old enough. Yeah, that got poisoned and died.
Oh well, I'd say I didn't know that. I don't watch Game of Thrones or anything like that. But I knew I disliked that actor. I don't know why.
He's got a punchable face, but
He does
yeah,
have.
his character was so evil that he could walk out on the street. I hopefully he's a nice dude. I mean, from what I know, he's a nice dude, and he's walking around on the street, and people are like, "Come here, come
Yeah.
here."
How dare you do that? And he's like, "No, please don't hurt me." I don't know how.
And he's like, "I didn't do anything," and they're like, "Oh, I want to punch you in the face," and he's like, "That's called acting. I'm doing a good job."
I was pretending. That's why I think it's so funny when you have, what is that? Who played Lincoln? What was that guy's name? Ah, man, he's a famous actor. He played Lincoln. He also played the Butcher in Gangs of New York. He was
Daniel Day-Lewis.
Daniel Day-Lewis. So for him to prepare for a role like when he was Abraham Lincoln, he went, he lived in a log house and he farmed and he did all these kind of things. And then when he was playing the Butcher, he butchered, for a month. He took that as a job because he was like so like in character. I just think that it's so funny when he does that because there was probably other actors out there, like for example, I think I've used this joke on my original channel, but I'm gonna use it anyways. There was this like you can have Jason Statham and he would be playing somebody like Abraham Lincoln and he's like, yeah, four score and the and then he'll be, and I told the South, you want to fight, eh? You know, and scene. And then after the scene's done, he tells Daniel Day Lewis, and he's like, I was a farmer for a year. And he's like, oh, did you like my role? I was pretending. It's just like,
Yeah, it's called method acting. A lot of actors do that. They're like, okay, well, what's my role? And they're like, you're gonna be a crackhead that lives in a shitty apartment and trying to get out. And they're like, okay. And they go hole up in like $1,000 a night hotel, smoking crack, and
I was gonna say they're over there just hanging out with Hunter Biden for a week.
they're going to hang out. They go in the bad part of town, and rent a shitty apartment, but they've got like
Yeah,
security and stuff, and they're smoking crack in the apartment, and they're like, oh yeah, okay, all right.
yeah, they're over there. Can you imagine like Sylvester Stallone playing a crackhead, and then he's like around town, hey, I can find some crack cocaine. Yeah, I was smoking crack, yeah, because he's all on crack. Thinking he's actually Rambo. Who are you to tell me? But anyway, so like you said, it's just if the actor is good enough, they can really suck you into a story, into a movie, into a story. Um, just like in old plays like ninjas or shinobis as they're known in Japan, or Nippon as they call Japan in Japan. That's the actual name of Japan, is Nippon. They used to have these plays where they would put them on, and ninjas originally did not wear black. They didn't wear black. They wore something closer to midnight blue because it's easier for you to blend at night if you're wearing midnight blue instead of black. Black actually stands out in the darkness. You know, if you're in a dark place and then there's something darker there, it catches your eye. Um, but the reason why they would wear a black thing is because whenever they would have plays, people were trained that the people that were like the stage crew that were supposed to like move props, they wore all black. They wore a black mask, they wore like everything because they almost became invisible because people knew what they were. You know, like they're like, "Oh, what's that?" And it's like, "Oh, he's just going to move the set so that we can advance the story." You know? So eventually when people watched enough plays, their brain got programmed to where these people were invisible, like the stages were basically moving by themselves. So whenever they started like introducing ninjas into the scene, people would they would be dressed like the stagehands. All of a sudden a sword comes out and they start attacking the character and everybody would jump. You're like, whoa, they came out of nowhere. And it's like, no, he's been standing there the whole time, only your brain has been programmed that he's invisible, you know. So it's not just like I'm kind of going off the rails here, but it's not just a television thing. Like programming in that sense has existed for such a long time. Only as the technology gets better, they begin to adapt how to make it more effective. You know, so
Yep.
we have the conditioning, right? And then, but now we have the technology where they can actually implant thoughts through signals through your Wi-Fi. You know, and you have no idea. You know,
Yeah, I read some crazy stories about people um, saying that they never had a problem, and then one day all of a sudden they had like just random voices pop in their head, and one even claimed that their neighbor was doing it because they could hear their neighbor's voice in their head for a while. And another one was that there was two distinct voices, and they would both switch on and off. And these people never had like
mental health.
schizophrenia or mental health problems or anything like that. I think. So yeah, the technology is there, and then I don't know, somebody smarter than me just went to like Home Depot and built like a brain ray, and they're like,
Yeah,
this guy has been a jerk for quite a while. I'm gonna mess with him.
I'm gonna mess with. Yeah, you just build it yourself, like out of an old microwave, a crock pot, and
Some
duct tape
tinfoil and some hangers.
and a Hannah Montana coloring book, and then that's how you.
Yep. And a
That's a,
cell phone.
and of course the cell phone. You know, that's one of the conspiracies that they had with the Son of Sam. Is that the Son of Sam? You know, he went out there and he was shooting people because he said that the neighbor's dog
Yeah.
was was commanding
Was the
him.
devil and told him to do it. Yeah.
Because Devon told him to do it, and then somebody said that he was just pretending to be nuts. But there was something wrong with him. Like if you look at him in interviews, some people were saying he was just trying to, you know, plea insanity and all that kind of stuff. But when you look at when he was caught, he was smiling. You know, he was smiling. There was nothing wrong with what he did, and he very confidently just said like the dog, like there was no like, oh shit, I've been caught. He wasn't even trying to hide. Like when they got,
Yeah. Yeah. He's like, yep, I did it. Take me to
he's like,
jail. Don't
I
care.
did. And he was smiling, and then they're like, "Why did you do it?" And he goes, "Well, so and so told me to do it." And they're like, "Who's that?" You know, and they were trying to figure out if he had a partner. Like, is he getting orders? Is he getting paid? Is he? Then they figured out, like, no, that's the neighbor's dog.
Yeah. Could you imagine going into a hardcore investigation like that? And then you're like, okay, it's got to be a person. It's got to be a person. No, it's a dog.
It's a dog, and he's wearing like a mustache and a monocle, and you're like, "Damn
Yeah.
it!"
And a little top hat.
Top hat and a cape, and the dog just man, like runs off, and they're like, "Damn it, we lost him. He blended in with all those dogs."
Yeah.
Um,
And the poor dog's name is like Moriarty or something like that. And you're like,
yeah,
ah,
yeah, Moriarty the dog. No, but so one of the conspiracies is that he was getting he was getting like signals either through his radio or somebody in his building was doing that to him because you know he was getting these thoughts and it was almost like out of nowhere like there was no history of of a mental illness. All we know was that when he went to Nam, he loved his prostitutes and he loved this his what is that the drug that the Chinese were using,
Opium?
opium. He loved his opium, but he had like no criminal history, until he moved into this building. And after he moved into this building, all of a sudden he just starts killing people. Oh,
Yeah, that could be a number of factors. He could be getting like little magnetic frequency, black mold,
yeah,
rat droppings, mouse droppings, all sorts of crap that's floating around. I mean, where is this? New York?
this was
Cockroach droppings. I mean, all that stuff is toxic.
yeah, it could have been a huge number of things, but yeah, it was so strange because also the theory that the dogs might have been so okay. So some people thought that it was weird that outside of his apartment, like a group of dogs would always be like hanging out, and then some of the neighbors said that they can hear him like roll around, and screaming, telling him to shut up. And then some people are like, yeah, some guy screaming, and he's screaming that multiple voices are yelling at him, and here's this gang of dogs outside of his window.
I mean, man, I'd like to look into his background because if he's got some kind of PTSD or insomnia or like that, and you're awake like 24 hours a day and you're trying to sleep and you're finally nodding off and the neighbor's dogs start going off, yeah, you're gonna get pissed.
You're gonna get pissed, and I would imagine that if they were being loud and he looked out the window, like if he had a mental health condition, but I couldn't find that he had a. I know he had like a lot of issues with like his mother and like abandonment and all that kind of shit, but I don't know if that would be enough for him to go out into the streets and just start shooting people. But what do I know? He could have just been nuts. Like, what do crazy people do? These
Yeah,
crazy, you know?
yeah. I'm just thinking of the mental illness side of it. I mean, if you're awake for more than 24 hours, your brain starts eating itself, and you start getting visual and audio hallucinations. So if he's only getting maybe 3 or 4 hours of sleep a day, and then when he starts nodding off or whatever, he's finally starting to like crash, and he's trying to crash out, and the neighbor's dogs start going nuts. Yeah, he's gonna get pissed because now he's gonna be awake for another day.
What's nuts is we're talking about sleep deprivation, and we did an episode, me and you, about Dr. Feelgood. Remember?
Yeah.
And one of the things that Dr. Feelgood, when he was talking to his patients, is he would have them pump oxygen into the room, and casinos do that, is to keep you
Mm-hmm.
awake. And he says the reason why he was pumping oxygen into the room, he says to keep his patients more alert, so that they could become more susceptible to the treatments. And people are like, okay, he's trying to help them, and it's like that's not what he's doing. He's
Yeah.
trying to become more moldable. You know,
Yep. You're gonna
so
be
that
awake more. You won't crash. You're more easily manipulated.
yeah, sleep deprivation. You may not be physically tired where you're nodding off, but you're awake, but your brain is tired. You know,
Yeah. Your brain is screaming, I want to go to sleep, and it can't.
yeah. And that was another thing with the cell phones and the shorts is how many people actually are like, all right, I gotta wake up early in the morning. Um, I'm gonna go to bed at 10 because I gotta wake up at 5, and that'll at least give me some sleep. And you're laying there in bed and you're just scrolling through shorts. Next thing you know, it's midnight, and you're like, ah, damn, because you get lost in that whole thing.
Yep. And you keep going. You're like, okay,
Keep
okay,
going.
one more, one more, one more. And you look at the clock, and now it's one. And you're like, shit.
Yeah, like, oh man, just one more because it's addicting. You're getting dopamine,
Yep.
you know.
You're getting those little dopamine hits.
And it's sometimes somebody will steal your audio because a lot of the algorithm is audio based. So somebody will steal the audio and then just put the audio onto something else. So you're watching basically the same video only with a something different happening in the screen, but it's basically the same thing because it's the same audio, you
Yep.
know. How many times has that happened to you? You're just scrolling and there's a song that comes up, I don't know, a song. just mention. Let's say Mandy. Like, oh Mandy. And then you go to the next one. It's the same thing. Oh man, only with different people.
Yeah.
And it does it over and over. And what is that? And imagine you're tired, you're sleepy. Now, what do you think that's happening in your brain? Obviously, that's what you're going to be thinking about when you go to bed. When you're sleeping, you're going to think of that. When you wake up,
you're going to wake up, and that song is going to be in your head.
your
So
head.
now, what do you? Okay, so there's a phenomenon where if you hear a song and it gets stuck in your head, the only way to get rid of it is to listen to that song. So your brain goes, okay, I've digested, I got the whole thing. And then it goes, okay, and shuts it off. But if you don't do that,
it keeps playing in your head over and over.
Yep. So what do you do to shut it off?
You
Get
go
your phone out, open the app, start scrolling.
and you start to scroll. Damn mind control via cell phone. And that's those things is that people don't think about, because I do that sometimes. I'm like, ah man, I'm so tired. I'm gonna go to bed. All right, ducks. Sorry, the ducks are in the background.
Ducks want their treats.
Yeah, they just want their treats. So that's the thing is that I'm like, I'm so sleepy. I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna watch a couple of shorts and then I'm gonna go to bed. And, like, the next thing you know, I'm like, damn, I've been up for like a whole nother hour.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I've done that. I don't know how many times. I'm just like, hey, what's on Facebook, and start flipping through that, and you're like, the next
yeah,
thing you know is like, oh my god, it's been an hour.
yeah, and that's what it is. That's why it's designed, that way. Now it even sends you like a text message, like burp, you're missing this, or burp,
Yep,
some-
so and so is live. Burp. Like this, so and so posted this. Burp.
yeah. Donald Trump is fighting, 5 homeless people, and they moved it, and you're like, I gotta check this out. And it's not what you thought it was, and it's like
Yeah,
it's like in a dream that he had, and then after you're done, you scroll and you're like, oh geez. But then you're like, well, what's this story? Because they link them together, like you find links to another story, and then you click on this, and then you click on it's the same thing, only in a different way, you know.
yeah. Instead of crack, it's click. That's how you get
Yeah,
addicted to
yep.
click.
And that's what it is. I mean, damn, dude, this was a good episode. I mean, we talked a lot of nonsense that we didn't even cover. We might just do a part 2 on this because it's ridiculous. I mean, we didn't even cover Havana syndrome. We didn't cover the what they call the crazy ray, which is like a ray that they discovered that when they discovered they created it, that if you aim it at a building, it's like sending these high pitched frequencies that can make you actually insane. Like you start, it hurt. It's like you're like a dog whistle basically for you. Now imagine if they pump this very slowly, every night, you go insane. And that's what they've been doing to a group of people allegedly. So we should cover that next time. So this
Oh
was
yeah, yeah. That one sounds interesting.
it's already been an hour. How crazy is that?
Yeah, we just ramble.
We just ramble. I mean, so anyways, yeah, this is
We
the
don't pick a topic. We just talk about it and then run with it.
yeah, I see. I can't decide if this should be a Patreon episode or just a free episode. You know, I don't know. It's too good not to share. But pretty soon we're gonna have the Patreon, and we're gonna start putting all these episodes. If you like what you hear, in the future, they're all gonna be exclusively on Patreon. Eventually, this episode will move on there, and I'll probably delete it off of YouTube. I'm just gonna put this on YouTube, and you know, it'll be up for like maybe a month, and then I'll just move it onto the Patreon. So, anyways, guys, this was fun, and this isn't even Nightmare Road. I don't know what to call it. What are we gonna call this show? Were we gonna call it the?
I had two. I picked two. The one I liked was the
Disinfor-
disinformation station.
I like that one. So, what's gonna be the outro for the misinformation station? This was, Birdie and Decon with the misinformation station. And remember, guys, don't touch that dial or something like that. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Anyways, guys, thanks for
We'll
joining.
workshop it. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll figure something out. Anyways, thanks for joining us, guys, and stay tuned for more. Like and subscribe, and that is it.